All right, so once again, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to come out on this chilly Thursday evening to spend a little bit of time with us. My name is Henry Hicks. I'm the president and CEO of the National Museum of African American Music, and it is really is an honor, and I'm really grateful that you all would take the time out of your schedules to visit with us. We're going to have two panelists, but for now we're going to get started with one, and it is a real pleasure to have my friend Harvey Hoskins to join me here to discuss. First of all, before I introduce Harvey, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. We wanted to really just get together and talk about the formation of the National Museum of African American Music, and in particular, many of us, sometimes myself included, wonder, why the museum is on Lower Broad instead of in North Nashville. And it spent a lot of time, 20 years in the making. And most of that time, I think the idea was that it was going to be at the corner of Rosa Parks and Jefferson. And so we wanted to just kind of get together and talk a little bit about that. And so there's we've got one of our founding board members in the room, and Dr. Lou Outlaw, I'm glad he was able to make time to be with us. He wasn't sure he was going to be able to, and so we're glad he's here. But one of the other founding board members is Harvey Hoskins, and Harvey's been along for the ride since the beginning, and maybe as early back as the late 1990s or early 2000s. Harvey is the president and managing partner of Hoskins and Company, certified public accountants here in Nashville, Tennessee. Harvey has worked for the IRS at one point in time, where he was the assistant audit division chief. Probably means he knows a little bit about what he's doing when he does your taxes. He's spent some time at the Harvard School of Business doing some executive training there. And he's also been recognized by the SBA as a Small Business Person of the Year. And again, more than that, I think Harvey has been one of the most dedicated people to making sure that the museum came along. And so y'all welcome Harvey Hoskins. So we're grateful that Harvey, that you would take the time to be here. And we'll start this off as a fireside chat, and eventually it'll become a panel. So, shit! Come on! And it is my distinguished pleasure to introduce you all to a woman who needs no introduction. Please join us. This is Councilwoman Sharon Hurt. She is formerly the president of the Jefferson Urban Merchant Partnership, Jefferson Street United Merchant Partners, SHIP, Jump. We'll get that part right. She's formerly the president. She is now the CEO of Streetworks, and she is a at-large city councilwoman and a candidate for mayor of the city of Nashville. So welcome, Sharon Hurt.
Thank you very much.
To join us. Sharon has also been along for the ride for a long time. But Harvey, why don't you start us off a little bit? I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about the story, or how did the idea for the museum come about in the first place?
It really got started with Francis Guest and Dr. T.B. Boyd. It was a small gathering, and they talked about the fact that Nashville had played a huge role in the civil rights movement. We had the sit-ins here, but yet Nashville, from an African-American perspective, was really not well known around the country. And they felt that we needed some facility that would provide education and just expose the city of Nashville as African-Americans to what had been accomplished. It's the music, and we'll get to that later, I'm sure, but it started out as the African American History Foundation of Nashville. We filed the exemption with the IRS in late 2001. It was approved March of 2002, and it was the initial name was the African American History Foundation of Nashville, and it, of course, moved on down the road and got to the music. But that's really the genesis of it. And Francis and Dr. Boyd, then they pulled in a number of other local leaders to get the ball moving. Chamber of Commerce got involved, the government got involved. But that's sort of how things got kicked off.
Yeah. And tell me, what were the early days of the project like from your perspective?
Very, very tough. The real challenge was assembling a board that was committed to making this happen, coming up with the real storyline and really selling what we're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, right around that same time, of course, the big National Museum of History came aboard in D.C., so that really kind of said, okay, well, can Nashville really make this happen in a competition with a structure as prominent as that? So the real challenge was getting the storyline out, getting folks to buy in, and then, of course, as you know, everything is always about the money.
Right.
So I would say if I had to point to one challenge, it was the money.
Yeah. Sharon, you had a view of this from a little bit of a different perspective, and how did you see it in the early days?
Can't hear me.
Well, I thought the biggest challenge was the location, because they had first thought about taking it over to Sankofa Museum, which was in Metro Center. And Sankofa was open over there for about a year. And I was like, why would you put it over there when it didn't last as a museum for a year? So I don't see how we're going to be able to get more people in that area. And at that time, the Metro Center was totally industrial. It was not much development in that area. We had Fountain Square, and it was not really flourishing as the way that they had anticipated for it to. I think it was a bit ahead of its time. So, I was like, listen, if the Titans can bid to have the football team here in Nashville, why can't I put in a bid for the museum to be on Jefferson Street? Because I felt like that's where the history of African Americans resided. It was the heart, the bloodline, the heartbeat of the black community, and not just for Nashvillians, but for all black people. It was a part of the Chitlin circuit, and anybody who was somebody in the music industry wanted to come to Nashville. I mean, there was Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington at the Ritz Theater, and you had Fats Domino and, Memphis Slim and all of these guys. Ike and Tina Turner, they was fighting on Jefferson Street, but they were here. And they were here, and Aretha Franklin and Jimi Hendrix and all of those folks that were here, and it was just a place to be in. And, they had about 17 nightclubs at one time on Jefferson Street, and, Muhammad Ali used to come all the time, and the Del Morocco. And, they had all kinds of things going on in Del Morocco, and one night they had a raid, is what I hear.
That's what you
Harvey,
hear.
I heard they had a raid, Harvey.
Okay.
And they had to sneak Muhammad out the back door and drive all the way to the Kentucky line in the dark because, we weren't supposed to be doing the things that they said that we were doing over there on Jefferson Street. But Michael McBride's brother was here in school, and he said he was the one that actually drove him. And when he got to Kentucky, that's when they were able to cut the lights on and get him home to Louisville safe and sound. And, of course, we didn't want everybody to know. And I think at that time he might have been known as Cassius Clay as opposed to Muhammad Ali. But that's what it was. And I think there were a lot of people in the community also said that Dr. Boyd was trying to build a place for his family's history, and they were kind of pushing back on it. But I think it was not as much engagement with the community as people wanted it to be. And, you know how things go and rumors travel.
Sure. So it was Harvey, I know it was a lot of work to overcome a lot of those kinds of things. And at some point in time, I think it was around 2011 or so. Now we've skipped. Now we started. Now Francis told me that he had the idea in 1998, and I guess, like you said, it took until 2001 before the articles were submitted or the exemption was submitted, and that was also when the feasibility study was done by the Chamber of Commerce. Am I about right with those dates?
Yeah, that's about right, because it did get started out in the late 90s. We had a few planning meetings with the Chamber of Commerce to get them involved. We had Dr. Lovett from TSU involved. A lot of initial planning teams was really involved in the process, but it didn't really kick off until in the early 2000s and so forth.
So by 2011, we decided to change the name. So
Right.
it was originally the African American History Foundation of Nashville.
Exactly.
And then the museum name had become the Museum of African American Music, Art, and Culture. And then we changed it to the National Museum of African American Music. Do you remember those discussions and how that went?
You know, it slips me in terms of when that name change, but I know there was a lot of discussion around, okay, we need something that's really a hook. And of course, with the Fisk Jubilee Singers and the history of Nashville being, of course, everybody calling it the Music City and the story being untold, in fact, why it really is the Music City. And after a lot of discussion, it just seems that it would make sense to go with music.
Yeah.
And so when we land was when Governor Bredesen signed over the land, or at least granted a lease for the land on 8th and Jefferson, we were still in the African American history mode at the time. We had not made the conversion to music, and of course everything deals with politics. Obviously, Kevin Lavender was a key lieutenant of Governor Bredesen. There's Metro Council strength, Francis Guest having some political connections. That was all the politics that got that lease done, or that land contributed, so to speak.
But you know, it was really interesting because at the same time, they were looking at creating a new place for the symphony. And I recall that the symphony and the museum both came to the council. Now, I was not a member of the council at that time, but I just happened to attend because I was very much involved and interested in the museum coming to Nashville. And they granted them the money at the same time. And it was interesting how the symphony got the money, built the new symphony, was in a flood, and rebuilt before they were able to even break ground for the National Museum of African American Music. So that just shows you the challenges of what it is that we've had in trying to preserve the history in Nashville and how the priorities for reserving the history here in Nashville is not necessarily the priority. It may just be secondary.
Now, Sharon, you made mention of the city council, and the city council, of course, was instrumental in the funding that the museum got initially to get going. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you know, as I said, I wasn't on the council when it was granted, but I believe that they had given, was it 10 or 20 million?
It was initially 20.
I thought it was initially 20 million that had actually been approved. But as I said, over that time, you didn't get it.
No.
And again, I'm sure that what had happened is that they put it in the capital improvement budget, and it probably got moved, and where they said it was a priority, it moved to a B priority and down to a C priority. And when you finally did get some money, it was almost half of what it is, and you did not get it all at one time. I don't recall.
That's correct.
Okay.
It was half. It was $10 million.
Yes.
And what a lot of folks don't necessarily know is that it was a reimbursement grant.
Exactly.
So we did not get a check from the city for $10 million. We had to spend it first and then submit to be reimbursed up to that amount of money.
Exactly. So that means that they did not go out and spend $10 million. They may have spent $50,000 on something. They submitted an invoice and they got $50,000 back. So it's like always robbing Peter to pay Paul in order for us to have the things that we deserve to have. And to me, I just think it's such a sad thing for Nashville because we have been postured just for having that balance when it comes to the industries that we have here, whether it's music, education, or healthcare. You can see the balance of the black and white with all of the 4 HBCUs. That's the educational piece, the music, as you said, Fish Jubilee singers, Bobby Jones, the Tennessee State Grammy Award-winning Aristocrata bands, and of course the Grammy Award-winning Fisk Jubilee singers. So just think about the fact that Nashville has 2 colleges, universities with Grammy Awards. And there should be so much celebration of this black excellence that we have here, but it is always secondary for them to recognize and celebrate the talents and the gifts that we have. And frankly, I'm tired of us being tolerated and not celebrated. It's time for us to rise up and do the things that we know was meant to be. And when you look at healthcare, we've got Meharry Medical College, we have the dental school, the School of Graduate Studies, Matthew Walker, and all of those healthcare facilities that specialize, because Meharry used to have a sickle cell center once upon a time. We used to have a School of Nursing that offered master's degrees, but they also offered a midwifery program, which now is coming back. So, history repeats itself. And I'm just talking about how the celebration and the legacies of people here in Nashville, how amazing that we all have been and continue to be.
Well, I mean, and you make a really interesting point, a compelling one. And so when we did change the name from MAAM to NMAAM, there was some real concern in the community about that because there was concern that we would lose the history, the art, and the culture in changing to focus on music. And so one of the things that I recall about that was that there was a community meeting over at the library down out Rosa Parks Boulevard, the Luby Library. And we had a conversation and some folks were there and Faith Ruffins was there and participated in that with Paula Roberts, who was the executive director at the time. And we made the promise in that meeting to the community that even though we had changed the name, we would still hang on to the arts and culture somehow in the way we told the story. And so that's one of the things that when you go through the museum, we've really tried to hang on to that. So you see fine art, you see a celebration of Nashville, you see a celebration of Tennessee, you see a reflection of the culture, the lives that we all experience in ways that are reflected out of the music. And so we really tried to keep that promise. But I do wonder, why didn't we build the museum at the corner of Rosa Parks and Jefferson?
Because we didn't own the property. If you own the land, you determine what happens. They were going to allow us to use that land, and you saw that it was there for a decade, and no ground had been broken on that. And when you don't have the money in order to do it, but personally, Henry, I believe that it being downtown is the better location. Yeah. I think that if it had, because you already have a planted population of people, and you don't have to worry about bringing people over here, and that would have been the only thing that was here. And the same thing would have happened over here on Rosa Parks and Jefferson Street that happened at Sankofa. And now I'm wondering if it was a disingenuous deal from the very beginning, because they knew that they were going to want to build a state museum, and that's one of the reasons why money never became available, and you weren't able to do it. But see, God has a way of working things out, because we definitely more black presence downtown, and we need more black music downtown. So for us to have that, and we still need more, but that is an anchor, and that is something that people have to recognize. That's why I'm so happy that you have the Broadway, the sign, and people can see it from afar.
I appreciate that. Y'all give it up. I appreciate that, but it wasn't that easy.
No, it wasn't, but I'm just saying that you had the vision to see that and to recognize it was something that needed to be done.
I seem to recall cocktails with you, Councilwoman Hurt, at a weekend on Church Street where we had to have a long conversation about this idea.
And
you came around right quick. But I also remember that we had the good fortune of being able to go over to Dr. Outlaw's home with a group of folks to have a conversation about that.
I recall that as well.
And that was a real turning point.
It was.
And I wonder, and Dr. Outlaw and I were talking, I was looking for another microphone to give you, but we were talking the other day, and Dr. Outlaw said, now, why would we want to give over downtown to the white folks in the country music when we started it, and we really should be right? Why we should take our own position downtown? We still got North Nashville, we still got Jefferson Street, but we should take our own position in downtown. Harvey, what's your point of view on that?
I agree with Sharon. I think it was God's blessing that it did end up downtown where, major traffic, and that's what we need, people coming in and out. So it worked out in our favor. One of the reasons it actually transitioned is that the lease on the property was granted under that 30-year lease for $1 in 2004, where there was a timeline in terms of raising the money and breaking ground. You will recall that we hit a point there when the economy went crazy about 2008. And I remember the late Dr. David Williams was chairing the Capitol campaign at the time, and he said, man, I'm out here trying to raise money, and rich people say they don't even feel rich anymore. So it was really, really challenging to get that money. And like you said, in the meantime, the city-state decided, okay, we're going to move forward with this property, but it ended up being a blessing.
Yeah, I think so as well. So, what were, you've talked a little bit about it, but let's talk just a little bit more about the benefits of being at 5th and Broadway. Any thoughts on that, Harvey?
Here again, I think it's just the benefits of huge exposure. If you kind of think about, okay, as folks, a lot of tourists come into town, 8th and Jefferson, great location, but that's not where people are going to be walking and so forth. And so you got all that foot traffic, and I'm sure people just come by and check it out, that otherwise that wouldn't happen. And of course, I'm speaking Henry's language now. It's one thing to get a museum built, but it's something altogether different to sustain it once you open the doors. So that foot traffic is huge.
When 13 million people a year go past the corner of 5th and Broadway.
Absolutely, okay. That's wonderful.
And that makes a difference. I just need a couple percentage points. We'd be all right. Sharon, what's your point of view on 5th and Broadway?
I absolutely believe that it is the very best place for the museum. I love the fact that it's an event space, and especially with everything that has happened, and for us to have that presence. And, everything nice for black folks shouldn't have to just be in the black community. We need to have that presence this is us. I mean, we are a part of the excellence and the greatness of this country, and it's not just because we are black. But they need to celebrate this black excellence that we are. And if we don't, sometimes, it's about choice or force. for them to do it. And with us being downtown, then they are forced to look at it. They are forced to see it no matter what. I mean, I was in the River House restaurant a couple of weeks ago, my husband's birthday, and I looked out the window and I'm looking all the way down, and I'm seeing Bobby Jones's face. I know he liked that, that his face, he can see his face for miles away. You know what I mean? But it looked good, and those colors, and it's just bold and just beautiful, and I just absolutely love it. I mean, can you say it loud?
Say it proud.
That's what I'm talking about. And I just think it's really that important for us to be able to celebrate ourselves and have others celebrate us as well.
So Sharon, let me ask you this question, and I actually will turn this question eventually here to the audience. But how do we help the citizens of North Nashville feel as though NMAAM is their museum?
So I think a lot of it is about education, and they don't know it. And we might have to take them to the museum for them to know, understand it, and see it. I recall having, when the NFL draft came, and Butch Spearden was I said, Butch, how are we going to get these kids? I said, what about things for the kids in those communities for which these players come, from which they come? How are we he said, we got all kinds of activities over there, and everything is free. They can come over there to the stadium. And I said, well, how are they going to get there? And he said, well, I never thought about that. And he said, you think if I got some buses that they would come? I'm like, absolutely. They got 2 buses, and we had 2 time slots. And each one of them, we had to turn people away. They had no idea. So I think that if we expose our people to the things that are available, the resources that are available, because, some of those kids that live in Cheatham Place and some of the other areas don't know what it's like across Jefferson Street.
That's correct.
So we have to make sure that we take them. We have to be responsible for them. We have to continue with the journey and make sure that we are responsible and don't leave them behind.
Amen. Harvey, what's your point of view on that?
I'm on the money side, so that's a little bit out of my area of expertise. But I totally agree with Sharon here. I think we have to take it to the community. I recall that Project C, which sits in so-called Dodge City, is one of our clients, and I remember
Cumberland View. It's Cumberland View.
Cumberland View is my bad. That's anybody from North knows what that term
know
is.
what it is.
Cumberland View. They know what it is. But I recall Miss Alexine Hamby, who was directing the center over there. She said a lot of these kids have never been across Bartow Bridge.
Right.
And that's kind of frightening. So I think it's incumbent upon us to invest the resources to make it happen. I think we have to take responsibility for our own community. I don't think we should expect somebody else to do it.
That's right.
It's incumbent on us, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. When you get old, you don't care what people think about you anymore.
Tell us how you really feel, Harvey.
If we wanted this museum, we want all it, we have to support it.
Absolutely.
We have to do it. Yeah, the government should give us money and so forth, but we have to step up. And I chair finances for a number of institutions that are our institutions. And when I go down the list for contributors, in many cases, it's not us. And I hate to say this, rest his soul, the late Ben Rector, we wouldn't have a museum downtown.
Right.
We wouldn't, people. So we have to step up. If we believe in what we say we believe in, we need to reach in our pockets and give back.
And the thing of it is that we are the largest group of consumers. Right. Now we go over there on West End and we spend money over there, but we don't spend that money right back in our community. And we should. We have to do it. And we, do it by example. Not, you hold somebody else responsible. Do you have your membership? I got mine. Look, I just found out the other day that I could use my membership and park for the first 2 hours for free.
Right.
I didn't know that. And they said, I was like, wait a minute, hold up. What? Let me get my card. I pulled my card out. And bam, you ain't know it either, did you, Lou? See? That's what I'm saying. Right. Look, you gonna save membership fee on park. And you go down there 2 times and bam, that's your membership. That's a family membership right there.
So what do you all think? How do you all think we can encourage the citizens of the north part of the city to really feel like it's their museum? He's got a microphone for you. We found an extra one.
Okay. Well, I'm Lorenzo Washington. I'm the founder and the curator for the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. Now, one of the things, first, Mr. Hicks and myself have been good friends since he started the museum. Sharon Hurt, we have been friends since...
He started the Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues Festival 23 years ago.
With Miss Marion James.
Right.
And Harvey Hopkins is my CPA. So I pretty much know everybody up there. But anyway, what I've had some folk from the community, now I don't use a lot of big words and all now. I'm just going to tell you like it is. I just turned 80 years old, so I'm no spring chicken. But anyway, I've heard some of the folk from the community say that that the African American Museum has sold out as far as the community was concerned, and I know that's not the case. But when it comes to the community, some of the older folk and some of the younger folk that's just learning about the museum, and what I tell them when I'm talking with them is that I've been on 6 or 7, 8, 10 panels with the African American Museum. So I've been down there on panels like this for quite a few times. But I let them know that it's not that they have sold out. It's that they are doing national things with the African American Museum. And they are wondering, why aren't you displaying some of the Jefferson Street and the community music and entertainers that was on Jefferson Street, like Frank Hall, Jimmy Church, Tyrone Smith, Marion James. Some of those artists are not being displayed in the African American Museum downtown, and they were very disappointed that they didn't see any of the local artists and musicians represented in the African American Museum. Now, I started the Jefferson Street Sound Museum because of some of these artists complaining about not being visible in the community, that the community was not speaking of them anymore. Their legacy was not being managed in the community anymore, and they were just upset. They've been mad, and they finally had somebody to take all of that out on, and that was the African American Museum. So the Jefferson Street Sound Museum was able to just settle in and be that friend to all of these old artists and musicians and artists that was expecting the African American Museum to be a part of their community, and they left.
Well, I will say, that is it's disappointing, and it's a little bit hurtful to hear that that feedback. I will say a couple of things. One is that as you've noticed, and hopefully those of you who've been noticed, there are a lot of Nashville and Tennessee focused artists that are there in the museum. I think there is an opportunity for us to work with you and to work with some of those artists to create a Nashville-based artist exhibition that is a big, robust project that we do. For example, we have an exhibition on Dr. Bobby Jones,
Right.
and that exhibition went up 2 months ago or so.
Fairfield 4.
The Fairfield 4 are represented in
And
the,
the McCrary.
I believe the McCrary sisters are in there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair point. I mean, that doesn't mean that those homegrown, long story Jefferson Street musicians are not as reflected. It is in defense of our storyline committee and our storyline committee chair and the curators, scholars that put it together. It's a big story that we're telling in a relatively small space. But that is something that we'll work on. I look forward to talking with you more about how we can do that, how we can address that going forward. Dr. Outlaw, you have any thoughts on that?
I got lots of thoughts on that. Having been involved with this project for 14 years, I chaired the Storyline Committee. That's another long story. We're talking hundreds of pages of scholarship produced to cover 400 plus years of the production of cultural, artistic expression in music by folks of African descent. 400 years worth of stuff. And we only been laying this out now 2 years. Just 2 years. We've got 7 galleries, is that right?
Yes.
7 galleries, some permanent, some changing. We intend to be at this storytelling business long after I'm dead. Now, Richard Pryor had a joke in one of his albums about Negro.
Careful telling Richard Pryor jokes.
I'm gonna clean it up now.
I got a lot of those.
This is directed at brother Lorenzo. It was somewhere like Chicago, since I got a lot of relatives over on West Side Chicago. This brother has died, and you know how we do when people die. We want to bury them in their finest. So one brother said to the family, this brother, as he was lying in his casket, says, "Negro, if you think we're gonna bury you in them diamonds, you got another thing coming." Right? They ain't going to. And the story in my family was, don't you put no diamonds on nobody in no casket, because the undertaker gonna take all that stuff anyway. It ain't gonna go.
Right.
Yeah, you just turned 80. I'm right behind you, but brother, if you think all that stuff in the museum gonna go in some casket with you, you got another thing coming, right? My point is, that effort ain't gonna be lost. We gonna figure this out. Number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're in the business of telling stories hundreds of years in the making. Furthermore, the making isn't over. Mm-hmm. New music is being created literally every day. There are going to be forms of musical expression being produced by folk who are black that I'm not going to recognize 10 or 15 years from now. So the rest of y'all are going to have to figure out how to get it up into that museum, but it is designed to be there to have that come in. Simply put, we can't tell every episode, every chapter of a 400-year history in just a year or two. We can't do it. That's the wonderful part. We've got stuff that we're going to be able to keep laying in there over time, but that's why I say to people, you want to go to the museum? Go the first time just to scout it out. Don't try to take it all in, because you can't. This is a place you've got to go back to, and back to, and back to, because you cannot even absorb one gallery in one visit. There's just no way you can do it. You can't read everything on display in a single visit and really absorb it. It's too much. You got to make a habit of going there again and again and again. Pick this gallery one day, this gallery another, etc.
That's why you need that membership with 2 hours of parking.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You can keep coming back. Well, what other questions do you all have that we can answer? Or what else should we talk about while we're here together tonight?
All right, good evening. How you doing? I'm Jordan Harris. I'm the owner of Cable Line Images bookstore down here on 28th and Jefferson Street. And I guess a question I have for you all, because you mentioned the foot traffic and how many people come by the museum, but you also ask how to connect the museum to the rest of town. I guess a way to kind of get more input on that is to understand more of the position of the museum, because I guess when people in town think about it, everything downtown is tourism. And especially since COVID, most black folks are like, I ain't going downtown for nothing. I ain't trying to get sick or whatever. And we've kind of a broad feeling around the city is that we've donated the downtown to the tourism industry. So people's desire to go downtown for anything, it needs to be a special occasion to put up with everything. But maybe less of a special occasion knowing that if you got a membership, you can get the 2 hours free parking, because that always ups the cost of just the trip. Like, okay, I got to put up $40 just to come park. So I guess understanding your position on what's our balance between being a tourist destination and folded into the tourist compound that is Broadway, and what are you doing from, I guess, the museum is a nonprofit and trying to elevate a piece of our culture and engaging with the rest of the city to either meet people where they're at or convince people to come down.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, one of the most heartwarming moments for me was our grand opening was on Juneteenth, 2021, and we had a block party on the rooftop of the museum, and folks came out, and boy, did they come out. And it was folks could not believe that there were this many black folks partying on the rooftop of 5th and Broadway. And they had come out, and I thought that was an opportunity, a real turning point in the city, because you had a few thousand black folks who felt comfortable enough to come downtown and partake in that kind of a fun and historical occasion. And so that's an example, but also like doing things like the Bobby Jones exhibit that we have up now, celebrating a local homegrown celebrity and music star, but then also some of our educational programming. So Byron Harvey is in the back there, and he does a lot of our programming. So we did the Drum Major Instinct as a celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. Byron, you're going to have to tell me what the other two or three. We've done several events over the last few. Avriana, the personality, is back there, and she just did a check-in a couple weeks ago. So we're doing programs that are designed to speak to the local community, to say, here's something we have for you. Come on down and hang out with us. So that is one place we're starting.
If I could answer and address that as well. So how many of you all have been to the Gateway to Heritage on Jefferson Street? Yeah, that's what they've done. They drive past it. When we did it, if you notice the pillars, those black pillars that are up and down Jefferson Street, we actually created those to be a pathway to the museum, because we thought that it was going to be on Rosa Parks and Jefferson Street. And each one of those pillars has history about Black Nashville. And those that are closer, you got civil rights in the areas that's closer to Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks is there, as well as First Baptist Capitol Hill, and it was going to be at the end where the museum was to be. Those that are closer to Fisk has more of Fisk information, and then you have Meharry, you got Citizens Bank, but all of those pillars speaks to Nashville's Black history, because there's nowhere in this city basically that there is anything that really celebrates our culture. The reason why I did that Gateway to Heritage is because, first of all, that bridge was such an eyesore. You had homeless were there. The TDOT did not take care of the fence that they had up, and it was just desolate, dark, and ugly. And they would allow the grass to grow high, and I just stayed on top of them. And the other thing is that there was a heritage conference that came from MTSU, and they said that Jefferson Street was the first workshop to sell out. And when the people got over here, and I talked and spoke and, did as much theatricals as I could and was wonderful, but they were disappointed because they said, ain't nothing here. Nothing that talks about the rich history that you all have. And on that Gateway to Heritage, there are those 5 pillars are athletics, civil rights, music, religion, and education. And talk about all of those things that happened, because as you know, Nashville was a pivotal point for the civil rights movement as well. And no one knows that. And you know what, the most I got? Well, it is nowhere to park. For the game, it wasn't designed for you to be able to park. It was designed for it to be a walkability, for us to take in what our history is about, what Jefferson Street is about. So I think that leads me to where Lorenzo was talking about that people were complaining about that we didn't have local artists who were there. We have to be honest and real, and I don't say that we don't have the local artists that are there, because we've got some on display. But if you got people from all over this world coming, they just don't know who Marion James is, but they know who Jimi Hendrix is. They know who Bobby Jones is, and they may know who DeFord Bailey. And do you know, we just got it passed on Tuesday night that we're going to have an honorary street named after DeFord Bailey after all of these years. Mm-hmm. Just got it. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that most of those, the namings of the streets have come because I've been about making sure that we celebrate Black folk. Because I just don't see how we allow them not to. I'm going to speak up and I'm going to speak out. And I'm like you, Harvey. When you get old, you just do it. You just don't. I think when women get 50 years old, you don't care. You just say whatever. And what, right? Right. But I just think that again, that we have failed somehow in teaching our young folk and having them to embrace the history. And perhaps it's the technology. The technology is right there at their hands and they can get it quick, fast, and in a hurry. But if they don't know to look for those things, then they won't. Does that help any? Or you don't like what I said?
No, I was just, so what I was asking was more about the engagement with the museum and the rest of town.
Right, because see, I'm going to tell you, Jordan, it bothers me that Akibalon is not packed all day, every day. If anybody were to go into Akibalon, the vibe that you get when you walk in the door You know, you feel it. When you leave there and get in your car and you get back in there, you can still smell that Akeebalon. You know what I'm saying? Because the incense and all of that nice stuff that, you know, all those good smelling oils and everything, it just feels like us. It feels good. And we need to experience that. But we've been so commercialized to so many other things that we've just forgotten who we are.
You know, I definitely agree, and I think when you go into the museum, I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful though how everything is at multi-level. You look up, you look down, you see us in there, but I'm just talking about bridging that gap to get people in there more, because museums around the world are often tourist focused, and you struggle no matter what the museum is,
Right.
seeing how well is it engaged with people there.
I think
how often do people go to the local museum?
I think the biggest part is our programming. And one of the things that we've been doing since several years before we opened was taking our education initiatives into the schools. So there's a big thrust that we have of sending our teammates into the Metro Public Schools to educate our young people about the work and about the music and how it correlates to their work. And doing that both digitally as well as in person. So that's one way, and then the programming is probably the most robust and consistent way that over time, we had Black Santa, and so that was intentionally aimed at the local community to say, where else in town are you gonna find Black Santa for your black kids to come sit on that lap and take that picture? So we did that for the last 2 years. And we'll do it again next year. So there are things like that we do to make sure that we're reaching out and that people feel like it's home. But we need to keep doing more, and so that's why we're here. We want to have this conversation today.
So what I'm gonna do is ask you all, since we got 4 quarters in a year, and we have our New Year's resolution. So we're gonna have quarter resolutions, right? So every quarter, we're going to do something black. So invite your friends and your family and tell them. So now we got a new quarter resolution. So our second quarter resolution is that we going to the museum, or we got to spend that time. And that third quarter resolution, we got to make sure we go over to Akeebalon. And maybe that fourth resolution, you go to Woodcuts. And maybe the fourth one is that you go hit all of them and buy your Christmas gifts from each one of those places in order to give to other people. And when people start seeing you going and gravitating to those things, perhaps we'll start getting the traction that we need. Like Cedric the Entertainer was saying, that you see folks start running, you don't even know why they running, but you just start going with them. You know what I'm saying? So maybe if we just start going, and then people will start coming behind us, Yeah. Say we're going to go down there to Slim and Husky's on 5th and Broadway, and we're going to stop by the museum, or go get us some Princess Hot Chicken and stop by the museum. Because if we continue to ask for these things and get it in the budget and get it paid for, and we don't go and utilize those things, then we lose the credibility of being able to ask and get the things that we want and need for us. Now, if y'all get a mayor in there that has that as a priority.
All right. Don't you miss that, right?
Hey, everybody. First off, I want to thank y'all for, teaching me a lot today. I am Avriana, the personality, and I am one of the newer generational pillars, doing everything I can for Nashville's hip-hop and R&B community. But I wanted to answer a question and ask one. So to answer the initial question about how or what you guys can do to make North Nashville or the museum feel like it's ours. As a Nashville native, as somebody who grew up in Dodge City, I think the best way for the newer generation is digitally. I know, everybody want to be in person, but our generation is we always have our phone. So I think a way to reach out to us is, showing us digitally, visually, what are we missing out on? Why is it so important for them to come see us or for us to be down there or for us to know our history? Because it's a lot of us who don't know our history, and I'm learning every single day from you guys. So I think that's one way that we can connect with one another, and it's a generational thing that we can just do it up and down, and just feed the people how they need to be fed in that way. So yeah, that's that question.
Yeah.
Sure. My question to you guys is, what can I do? What can the newer generation do for you guys to continue the mission forward? What does that look like? What do you guys, or what would be a wish for you guys, for us to do to just keep what you guys have already done going in the vision that you guys would like it?
Harvey, start with you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your comments and passing that information on to us, because folks in my generation kind of lose sight of what's really working today. But I think one of the things is just continue telling the story. You said that a lot of the African American history don't know. Just keep on passing, doing what you're doing, passing it on to your colleagues and so forth. And that'll help the museum, sustain and grow our communities in the whole ball of wax. So, but again, thank you so much for those comments.
So I find so many lessons in music. Now, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And so, some of my favorites are Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind, and Fire, the elements, and you know what I'm saying, Stevie Wonder. But I'm going to tell you, just yesterday I was watching CBS Morning, and they had a storyline that said that there's mercury in tuna. If you listen to Marvin Gaye,
He says that.
what's going on?
Yep,
Mercy, mercy me. He said, fish full of mercury.
he sure did.
If you listen to what he said, in all of those songs, see, I can go back with the whole track with with what's going on and what's happening, brother. You already know who's going to save the children, save the babies. All of it is today. And then I was trying to get ready for this forum that we had on Monday, and I was listening, and something that came to my mind was the OJ said, "Give the people what they want," And then I was like, people moving out, people moving in, why? Because of the color of their skin. Run, 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 but you still can't hide. It's a ball of confusion. You know what I'm saying? And you just they talking about tax deduction. You know what I'm saying? It seemed like it's today that it was some good music, but it's lessons in that music. And we have to understand it. I was even listening on NPR, and they had Lamont Dozier on there. What's the Holland guy name? One of them, Dozier and Holland, they did the Holland Dozier, and he was one of the writers for the OJs too. And he was talking about how your introduction has to be just the bomb, and they was talking about, and he talked about backstabbers, and
We were singing that in office today.
so I'm just, it's all of that, and I'm gonna tell you, Curtis Mayfield. I was at council. I know I'm talking too much.
Go ahead.
But I learned so much in the music. And if you would just listen to the lyrics of the music, and don't get me wrong, because I like some of this rap music, because they got some heavy words in it too. I can't always understand what they're saying. I have to ask my daughters what they're saying. But I remember Kanye West was talking about how the ballers keep balling and the players keep playing and all the white men get all of drugging and all of that stuff. Y'all know the song I'm talking about. And I'm just saying, it's like we doing all of these things, but they are getting it all as opposed to us. And if we would just listen, because they all are geniuses. To me, those artists and musicians, I don't even know how it works. I took piano lessons for about 10 years and I still can't play. Because my mind just didn't work like that. I can play the scale, but that's about it. And Up in the Sky, Y'all remember that in the first grade, in that first one, that blue book?
So, I would answer it by saying, come get it. Come get it.
Come get to this. That's Marvin Gaye too.
Yeah. Nothing gives me greater joy than to see someone grow, to be able to take what I've worked hard at or for and take it further, and do it in a genuine and a sincere way. One of the hardest things for a younger person, by definition, I mean younger than me, is to do that at the right pace and in the right way. And I could tell you my life story, and I am guilty of moving too fast most of the time. And those of y'all who work with me can testify to that. But to see somebody come get it, that's why we do what we do. It's not at a certain point in time. Sharon isn't doing the hard work that she's doing every day for herself.
Not at all.
That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing every day. I'm not doing it for myself. So the gratification comes when I'm able to go a little bit further down the road and look back and see somebody catching up.
Absolutely. Passing that baton. Because it's perpetual. It continues. It's got to keep on going. Because I want you to be able to hand it off to my grandkids and for them to be able to carry it and pick it up and go on and on. Because no matter what, we got to continue until we get to that point. Because that's why why we're here.
Y'all help me
Dr.
say,
Lou.
Dr. Outlaw, one last question.
One quick point to young sister. There's an interesting moment here that I think we shouldn't lose. You talked about your generation being really tied into digital technologies. What does that mean to this brother? Right here. I'll keep it on. Keep it on what?
Images.
What is the primary stuff in your four walls? Books. Not digital things, analog materials in writing. I'm on the threshold of retiring after 53 years of college and university teaching.
Yes. Give it up for him.
One of my worries is about your generation and the deep involvement in digital technologies. What am I worried about? The digital technologies are altering your senses of time. It's altering your appreciation of time. Look at how you spend a lot of your time engaging with social media platforms. How do you indicate your appraisal of things on digital platforms? And then you're done. Likes, dislikes, and then you're done. How long does that take? I have a son who works in this industry. He works for CBS Comic-Con. What are the metrics? How fast do people come onto a site, click, move on? How long do they stay? What's the staying power? They're not interested in how long you reside, just how many people come, click through, move on, etc. What is that doing to your sense of time? I can assure you, you cannot read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man the way you click on a social media site and register a like or dislike. You can't read Du Bois with the same sense of time and come to an appreciation. You cannot get the benefits of a keep-along bookstore with the orientation that you are cultivating on digital platforms. You can't do it. It requires a very different mindset, sense of time, and discipline to appreciate what's been offered up through these old analog kinds of things, even by playing a 33 and a third album.
That's right.
Right? That's a very different kind of experience to have. My worry, my deep worry, since I have to witness this in my university and college classroom, is how impatient your generation is. You don't know how to dwell. I'll be willing to bet you, do you know how to slow drag? Don't even know what that is.
But you know what?
Something to be said for some slow
But
dragging.
something you said. No. But listen. Let me
going
tell you
back.
something that what you said made me think about. I was at a KIP breakfast this morning, and they said that in my campaign, I'm talking about going back to the basics. But he said that in your formative years, you learn to read. In that, from your 4 to 6, 7 years old, you learn to read. Then it's time for you to read to learn. Oh, that was deep. That is deep. You read to learn, especially when you got 83% of high school graduates and only 20% of them are reading on their grade levels. So when they don't learn to read and they start clicking and looking and all of they doing is seeing a picture and they can't tell, they don't know how to tell time, they don't know how to count out change, they don't know how to do those things. They graduate, but they can't read. And all of this has been by design, because that's why people are leaving, because they can't afford to stay here, because they don't have the jobs, the education that it takes for them to do what they have to do to get the jobs that are necessary to keep them. I know I'm going off a little bit, but it is really important for our kids to learn to read.
And let me try to wrap it up this way and kind of try to tie all of that together. One of the things that's important about the way we designed our museum is that you can do both. And it is important that you're able to read. We spent a lot of time, I was explaining, there's a new acquaintance of mine is looking at creating a large exhibition, and I was explaining that there are people who actually have as a job the writing of the labels in a museum. It is actually a skill to write the labels that go in and around the exhibitions and the artifacts in the museum. We paid people special high prices to just write the labels in the museum. So there's plenty to read, but we tried to make sure that we could reach a younger generation with plenty of technology, things that you could touch and play and listen to and move around and swipe and download even and upload back to TikTok to try to use the digital platform to draw you back to the museum where you can read. So let me finish by saying this. I am here tonight because I want to assure you this is your museum. And when you go home tonight, especially if you go north, go home and tell your friends and neighbors this is your museum. We will maintain dialogue and we will maintain connection. And if you call me, I will answer. If you email me, I will respond, because this is your museum. And if we're not doing a good job of connecting to all parts of the city, but most especially the North Nashville Black community, then we want to do that. That is a failure. And so I'm not about failing. And so this is your museum, and I intend to do everything I can do to make sure that you and your friends and your neighbors and your businesses and your communities feel that. All I ask for is your help. Y'all help me thank our panelists, Harvey Hoskins. And let's thank Sharon Hurd, and then we'll take one last outsider question. So y'all help me thank Sharon Hurd as well. All right.
Thank you so much. I don't have a question. My family, we stay here. My sister and I stay here in the winter. We're from Michigan. And one day, the Lord just put it on my mind. I told my sister and I told my daughter, I say, I'm out. I'm going to Nashville, just out of the blue. So we've been here almost 3 years. But to me, and especially tonight, this meant so much to me. Just being here and being amongst everybody and just learning. Dexter's my nephew. And so when Dexter came to us and he said, Auntie, I got something for you. So that's our family that sponsored the hip hop.
Oh, wonderful.
And so we sponsored that photo, and then we're legends. So we joined the Legend Society, my sister and I. And
Y'all give him a hand.
so everything you said tonight just resonated within my soul, because growing up in Michigan was totally, you already know, right? Totally different. And I'm from Muskegon, Michigan, so we're on the lake, so we don't have any of this. I understand everything that was said, and it touched me. And so for me, we're here. I'm gonna talk to you because you're a CP. I need to holler at you, and I need to holler at you too. When you talk about education, and I understand the young lady that left because I like hip hop too, and I was gonna say a couple words to her and to say a couple things, but I'll be 65 this year. And I just told my nephew, I wrote him a note. I said, you know what? I'm going to cancel my birthday party in Florida, and I'm going to have my birthday party at the museum.
All right now.
And my birthday, June 21st, I take checks, I take gold, I take everything. Y'all want to come.
Come on,
I just thought I'd throw that out there. Because I feel like I want my friends all over to come and visit this museum. And we brag about it all the time. And one of my friends just left, and he asked me that question. He said, so why do you like Nashville? I said, because it's a vibe. It's nothing. I've lived in L.A., New York, and Chicago. I love Chicago, but it's just not like Nashville to me. It's just, I can't describe it, but if you all live here, you already know what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
The history, and when you talk about Jefferson Street, we just rode around and got lost, and we continue to do that, but I just want to say thank you. I'm here if you need me to support me, because I'll come. My sister said she's going to come do some, volunteer and do some stuff.
Well, thank you. Tell us your whole name.
Stephanie Marion.
Stephanie Marion. Y'all give it up for Stephanie Marion. Y'all go give her a hug and welcome her to Nashville. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here.